Welcome to episode 2. To get things started, we're going to talk about some stones here. You need an Arkansas stone, a couple different grits. You're going to want a ruby stone, and these will be used for finishing parts and for keeping your graver sharp. The next thing that you're going to need is some needle files. These next ones here are escapement files, a little bit finer. Then you're going to want a buff stick. Now this has got some sandpaper attached. And then you are going to want a nice digital caliper. These will be used for taking dimensions for parts and for measuring parts that you've completed. And then you're going to want to get a micrometer that's got some pretty good resolution here. That's for finished diameters. And I also like to use a steel rule for just kind of getting a baseline for the part size that I'm working on. Now this is some attachments that we have here. This is the tailstock. Now there's a lot of different things that you can do with the tailstock. You can hold different drill bits, cutters, turrets, lantern polishers, a lot of stuff. Here's one of the collets that you can get, or a collet adapter rather, that will slide into the tailstock for holding such devices. This is the cross slide that I have for my Watchmakers Lathe. It's a Mosley. It's got two different pivoting tables on it, so you can turn a taper and then square it off at the same time. That's a pretty neat feature that I use quite often. The device we're going to be using today here is the tip over tool rest. This was what most people have with their Watchmakers Lathe. It allows you to just use a graver by hand, and you can get pretty far with just one of these without the need to upgrade to a cross slide, but we'll get into that a little bit later. One of the unique things that I think everyone should use is one of these Watchmakers face plates. It allows you to center a hole like I have here with a bridge plate off center of the actual axis of the lathe. Another different chuck that you can use here is a 4-jaw chuck. This one I just ordered from China. It's not extremely high quality, but it works quite well and it does run true. And you'll notice I had to switch drawbars because the collet length was not the same as the rest of the collets that I have. But I use that drawbar for a few different collets that I have here. So here is a set of collets. You're going to want to make sure that you pick up a set of these. They generally don't come with the lathe. Sometimes you can find lathes that do have these with them. These are some wheel collets. Again, you want to be careful when you're clamping these onto a wheel because the steel is tougher than the brass wheel teeth. So you just want to make sure that you're being careful when you're doing that so you don't mar up the teeth. But I use this the most. Probably this is a wax collet, and it's good for finishing balance staffs and stuff like that. So. Another thing you want to make sure that you don't neglect is your tool rest. You want to make sure that it's nice and smooth and there's no gashes on it, because you want your graver to run across that quite smoothly. So here we are just cleaning it up, making sure that it's nice and smooth, and you don't want to forget the backside too. So you just kind of get a couple swipes on there, just get it cleaned up, and then we'll be ready to turn here. So the first thing that we're going to work on here is cutting a center in the part here, and it's easier said than done. You just kind of plunge it in there and just keep checking it, make sure you don't have parts sticking out and that it will actually catch the center. So here I've marked where we're going to kind of try to turn to, and we're just going to turn this nice and parallel. You can just figure out your graver angle that works best for you and which way you like to use it, if you like to push it or pull it or do the stepped dimension reduction that I see some people use. I find it works pretty well for me to kind of back pull it, I guess, where I would plunge the tip into it and pull it backwards. I find that gets me a nice parallel surface. But you're gonna have to figure out what works best for you, because some people are really good at pushing the graver forward like I'm doing here. I find that quite difficult. I tend to make it more tapered than I want, so it's not, it's personal preference, I guess, is kind of what you want to figure out what works best for you. So here I'm using the underside of it, and we're going to keep reducing the diameter a little bit. And what we want to do is make sure that you're getting good chips off of the graver, like big chips like that, like I'm doing. You can work on your speed that you're doing this at too. A lot of guys I see like to run these things really high speed, and I don't think that's necessary. You can run it at kind of a medium speed here. But here I'm trying to push it back. Again, I'm not super good at that, and it's not my preferred way doing it. Here we're gonna work on squaring up the shoulder. You can either stick your graver in the corner like I did there and then kind of pull it out, but it's really, you should have multiple gravers to do this. You should have one that's cut at a separate angle that's a little bit easier for getting in there to the shoulders. And now we're going to put a little bevel on this, or a chamfer. So you just kind of hold your tool at an angle and just get a nice clean chip off of it, and that'll put a nice taper on there, or a nice bevel, I guess, or chamfer, whatever you prefer to call it. So now we're going to work on parting it off. So I like to use the graver tip here just to make a nice little mark where I'm going to part it off. And I like to use a separate graver for actually parting off. Here's one that I made. It's a little bit thinner and it wastes less material, and it's a little bit quicker. So once we get that going, we can kind of stick that in there, and you kind of have to adjust the angle. It's a little bit different than using a cross slide, because you kind of, I like to adjust the angle that I'm doing it at, so you'll feel it with your chip load and everything, so that just kind of comes natural. All right, we parted it off here. Camera's out of focus, but if you want to clean up the other side, you would chuck it in the other side of the lathe, or in a collet, and clean up the other side. So now we're going to work on doing a taper, and you can see that I have a couple of different surfaces here. I'm just going to keep getting those surfaces blended together, keep tapering it down, keeping it at a nice consistent angle there, so that way we can get a nice taper on there. And you can use this to make different tailstock centers, male or female, or a center for the drive side too. If you're going to be doing things between centers, you're going to want to have a couple of nice centers to use. This one I'm just kind of turning into a female center, because I need one for my tailstock. I don't think I actually end up using this, but that's what we're doing here. And when you're cutting the center, that's a pretty difficult thing to do. So that's something that I think everyone should practice, because it's not as easy as you might think, but it's a very important skill to have, to be able to cut a nice perfect center on a piece that you have chucked in your lathe. Now I'm going to kind of taper this out a little bit more, just to do a little bit of practice, just bringing it out a little bit farther. And you can kind of see, you know, this is how you would make a round nosed item. If you're going to make some kind of punch or something, you can cut steel with these, no problem. So here I'm pushing that taper back, and we're going to work next on putting a nice curve in this piece. I guess I can't, cone, I guess, is what I need to be doing. Put a cone in this, because that's going to be how you would make a balance staff. So you kind of get your taper down to what you want, and then once we have the taper down, we're going to, you'll see how I pivot the graver kind of at one point, and then the end of the graver will swing on an arc, and that's how you get your cone for your balance staff. Now I'm not going to turn a balance staff out of this brass. It's pretty difficult to do. The brass is really soft and the pivots don't really hold up very well. So this is just kind of demonstrating how you can practice to get ready to actually turn a balance staff. And it's a lot of fun. You know, hand turning is a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. I don't use my cross slide as much as I thought I would, just because it's a lot of fun to turn by hand, and I'm using this lathe nearly every day. You know, like I said, I do a lot of restorations and on historical timepieces, and parts aren't available, so I end up making quite a few parts for them. So you just kind of work on your finish here, getting a nice smooth finish, and that's just kind of what I have for you guys. I know it was kind of a short video, and I hope you guys have learned something. Get out there, turn some stuff, get proficient at it, and we'll see you on the next video, and we'll start getting into more complicated things and more attachments that we use for the lathe. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and comment.